Welcome, as you see, to the Maryland Zoning Checkup. My name is Ken Confalone, and I'm what's different here in the room, just so you know. While most of the people here are paid employees and they do this, I'm here to represent the volunteer aspect of zoning checkup and zoning code renovation. And what's different is that the people you work with in the municipalities and the county are overwhelmingly volunteers. It's to be here and give you the perspective of what it is when you're working with people who are volunteering their time. So that's my perspective here, and I'll turn it over to Dave Dahlstrom.
Okay, well, welcome all. My name is David Dahlstrom. I'm the Upper Shore Regional Planner at the Maryland Department of Planning. And some of you may know me if you've ever submitted an annual report for your local government. I also coordinate the annual reporting process and then the 5-year comp plan update process. So maybe you've seen my name around. I've been with the department for 11 years now. I'm going to turn it over to Upper Shore is Cecil County, Kent County, Queen Anne's County, and Caroline County.
And I'm Joe Rogers from the Maryland Department of Planning. I do the western counties, so that's Garrett, Allegheny, and Washington County. I've been a planner for Maryland Department of Planning for about 4 years now, and I mostly work out and do the local assistance and training, so that's day-to-day stuff with local governments who may not have the staff or capabilities to do those annual reports and to submit stuff to David Dahlstrom. So I assist with a lot of the day-to-day maintenance and checkup stuff that you will learn about here today.
Okay, I'm just going to go over a little bit about the session line, outline what we have today. One, why a zoning checkup, and then Planning Commission perspective, we'll have Mr. Confalone give an idea of why he thinks this is important and the work that we've done with him over the years. Then the purpose of the zoning checkup, the history of the zoning checkup, and then we'll do sample of what the checkup consists of. It's a worksheet, and we'll go through some of that. And we have 4 components, and depending on whether we have enough time, we may only do 2 or 3 of the components. I will tell you that they're very similar, it's just that the topic area has changed, but the process is the same. So you're not really missing anything if we can't go through all of them before they cut us off, but just want to let you know that. And then we'll move on to what we're planning on doing next with the zoning checkup, and then take final questions. But we will take questions after each one of the sections, so you don't have to wait. So you can please let us kind of finish our section and then ask the question if you have that going on. So, let's see. Actually, why a zoning checkup? If you've ever looked at the website that we've developed for the zoning checkup, one of the things that we find is that planning commissions, one of their essential roles is not only is it preparing the comprehensive plan, it's also reviewing the zoning, preparing the zoning, making recommendations for zoning. Zoning is your implementation. You're also in charge of annexations, holding public hearings for annexations. Basically the comp plan, the zoning function, that's the role of the Planning Commission. And from the state perspective, we'll give you comments on your comprehensive plan, but we don't have a role in zoning implementation. The state law has zoning enabling, and the state has granted that enabling to the jurisdictions if they've adopted a comprehensive plan. So the state really doesn't have a role in it, but as a regional planner, I'll get calls periodically from jurisdictions that say, we need help. We've got this zoning code and it's not giving us the results that we're looking for, or we don't understand it, or things don't seem to be consistent between it. We need someone that has some expertise that can come and kind of help us sort things through. And so that's really why we've created this zoning checkup. It ends up being a tool that, as Joe and I have gone out and met with jurisdictions and they've come to us with issues. One of the jurisdictions that I went to, the chair asked me, David, what's the process you're going to go through? And I didn't have an answer because I'd never written it down. I knew what I was going to do, but I didn't have a document that I could say, here's all the things we're going to do. And there's a certain process you have to go through when you're assisting somebody with this. And so during COVID, Joe and I actually had an opportunity where we could sit down and just write down, what do we do when we go out to a local government, and what are we looking for, and how can we help? So this is how the zoning checkup evolved and why we do it. And Ken was one of the jurisdictions that many years ago had called and asked for assistance. And so Ken kindly agreed to come and share that experience with you. So I'm going to turn it over to Ken now.
It would have been nice to know what we finally learned by the end of the process, because we knew virtually nothing. If you take a look at your basic volunteer planning, to be put on the Planning Commission takes a 1-hour self-exam tutorial online from the state of Maryland. And that allows you to serve on either a zoning board or a board of appeals. We lacked everything. And if it wasn't for a phone call and later putting the regional planner on speed dial, I don't know how we would have moved the process. What I think you'll see in the zoning checkup is it's a way of quickly determining what you need to move ahead. The documents you need to have, the maps that you need to have, a sense of the process, because this involves speaking to the elected town or municipal county officials, public hearings. All these things just keep coming and coming, and you really don't know what you're doing, nor do you meet a lot. You don't have that discipline of going to work every day. So if it's beyond a monthly meeting, you have to set up separate meetings, and if you want to call resources in. So it begins to be quite a laborious process, especially if you don't know where you're headed, because you have no idea where you're getting there or not, when you don't know what you're doing. The counseling that we received was just tremendous. The telling us which documents and what we were deficient in. And I don't think anybody had a true knowledge of just how high this mountain was to climb. It was worth it. And as talking with the end in sight, last month's meeting for our planning and zoning, I took this outline of what's a zoning checkup. And everyone in the room was just highly confident as they went down the steps of it, because they knew what they had done, and they knew that we had the documents, the maps, the ordinance check, that everything that needed to be done got done. Soup to nuts, a little over 18 months. I mean, that's a lot of time, and not all the volunteers stuck it out for the 18 months, so there was a background learning curve to do it. The other thing is how many times these things overlap in planning with your zoning, and that's going to come up as they proceed through the process. That so many things come up, so many things change, and so many items in your zoning code are in conflict with other ordinances. So that it is a major to-do. And why do we do it from a volunteer basis? Well, by and large, who else is going to do it? Okay, the smaller municipalities don't have, for example, I'm town of Charlestown. We have about 1,500 residents. We have 3 employees that work office function, and we have 3 people in public works. The cavalry isn't coming. No one's on the staff to do that. And I don't know, when you do this, who comprises your planning commissions and your zoning boards. Just like a show of hands, do you know if they're all volunteers or whatever? A few? Okay. So it's a valuable resource. We asked anybody who's doing it to put the regional planner on their speed dial. And with that, I'll turn it over.
Stay up here. We're going to ask you a few questions. So did you know me before?
No.
Paul?
No.
You never called me before?
No.
All right. So you hear that, probably a lot of you have never called your regional planner, but But you can pick up the phone and say, we need help. Actually, it was the town administrator that called me and let me know what the issues were. And then...
And once he showed up, we realized that he better come back for the next meeting.
For how many months?
18 months.
18 months. And when do you hold your meetings?
Okay, 7 o'clock at night, okay.
It's an hour and a half drive up to Charleston, just so you know. So we're dedicated to do that, and it's great to work with a bunch of citizen volunteers that are passionate about their town and what they do. So, you know, we love working with folks that want to improve their town, and then just know something's not correct.
And if I could add into this, the one thing I think that we were shocked by is that we could write the comprehensive plan that we wanted, and we could write the zoning that we wanted. And I think we didn't understand that in the beginning. We thought we were going to get a set of thou shalts and thou shalt nots coming down from the state. And because of that, and because of, we had a couple of public meetings, the citizens came out for a little town. We had to have it at the fire hall. There's too many people came to have it at the town hall. And when they came, did they have the torches and the pitchforks? Oh, yeah, okay, because we had things, I'm sure you heard of these things called Airbnbs, or chickens, all right, or home occupation. And it appears that whoever likes or dislikes these ideas, they like or dislike it to the nth degree. There is no common ground. So it was interesting to work through it and finally get it done.
And how much did we cost?
Oh, that's the good thing. They used our entire budget of 0.
So you get what you pay for, that's what I'm saying. Well, thank you.
Okay.
Let's see.
Coffee should be hot now.
All right. So anyone want a coffee break?
Yeah. If anybody's punished by drinking cold coffee,
Okay. So one of the things I wanted, I guess this is my, one of the things that I wanted to talk about, you know, the purpose of the zoning checkup, and you know, Joe and I both work for the section at MDP called Local Assistance and Training, and so that's in our title, Local Assistance. And but we only, and you've heard the Secretary speak today. Typically, we give assistance when we're asked. You know, maybe we'll be a little bit proactive now, but again, we don't come if we're not invited, and so that's typically been our mode, is that we don't come knocking on your door saying you need to do this zoning checkup, but what we do is when we've met with folks that have asked for help, the result of these small towns asking for help created this document. We thought it would be helpful because, you know, one, we needed to write it down so we could tell people about it, and the other part of it too is you don't always need our help. If you look at this checkup, just like our annual report worksheet, you can look at it and answer the questions. You don't have to call MDP, but if you don't understand something, you can call us. And it's the same thing here, is that maybe your jurisdiction has got everything in order, and you look at the questions and you've done it all. Like Ken was saying, they went through the checkup the other night, and now they've done it all. So if they maintain it, then they probably won't find themselves in the same position. But a lot of jurisdictions don't maintain things, and they have a lot of staff turnover. You know, the planning board is volunteer. The clerk may not be there. The clerk may not understand planning and zoning and all that stuff, and so things don't get filed, things don't go through the right process, and you know, 8, 10, 12 years later, all these things pile up. One of the things that we always ask is, you know, do you have a digital copy of your zoning code? And Ken, did you guys have a digital copy?
We didn't, we do now.
You do now, okay. But you use an online service.
Right.
All right. So a lot of times just asking, when someone says, we need help with the zoning code, and you ask for a copy of the code, you get, you know, deer in the headlights look, like we don't maybe have a copy of it, or we don't have a complete copy, or it's a challenge, or they don't have a Word copy of it. And so if you're trying to do edits and updates and you don't have it, what do you share with the public? What do you have on your website? Does what you have on your website match your hard copy? And a lot of times they don't. So we look at those types of things. And we had one jurisdiction that didn't have a Word copy of it. Their code was written in typewriter. And we ended up, tried to scan it, and the optical scanner didn't work right for that. So fortunately, it was only 88 pages. So I took the first half, and the town clerk took the second half, and we typed it all in. So we had something that we could update. I don't ever want to do that again. But one of the things too is, like, if you have a consultant and the consultant has prepared this document for you, ask for the Word copy so you have it. Those types of things. Then the other thing we asked for is a copy of the zoning map. And so, Ken, do you guys have
The zoning map in a small town, you cannot imagine how many people come in to look at the zoning map. Right? And it's their lawyer, it's their developer, it's their builder. We are a small historic water town, so we have the overlays of the IDL, we have a historic zone, you just name it, we have overlay upon overlay. And when they come in, it has to be there because, especially with their attorneys, okay, is it signed? Is it dated? Does it apply to their client? Or if it doesn't apply to their client by some magic, what can they do about it? All right, so it is a critical document. And normally, ours is both online and posted. But as you well know, for any map that's online, people want to come in and see the document hanging on the wall.
So let me ask this question. Was the map hanging on the wall accurate?
Not particularly. Let's say, if you didn't care, it was a good enough map. Okay, if you wanted to contest whether that property could be enlarged or multiple family housing or a business could be put upon it, then it was something. And also, in verifying that map, we found a couple of triangles of land that never existed by meets and bounds. Okay, because the old meets and bounds talked about 3 slashes on a sycamore tree, 50 yards from that tree, which hadn't been there in 150 years. So it caused an awful lot of survey work to be done, a lot of consternation, but at the end we have a map that if you went there and looked at it and you knew your property, you could at least get the accurate information.
Yeah, their original survey was done in like 1757.
Yeah.
But then you looked at the town boundaries and the border didn't match. And it was primarily a rectangle, and it wasn't a rectangle anymore. So when I asked about the differences, we couldn't find anything in the record that ever changed the boundary. It looked like whoever made the map digitally just followed some property lines and not the actual town boundaries. So the whole town wasn't actually in the zoning map. And then some other areas that weren't in the town were added because they just added the whole parcel. And we also had a commercial property, and when I went looking for the records of the change, they had never held a public hearing for that parcel. And so when we were asked to redo the map, I could not, in good professional confidence, agree to put a zoning category on a map that had never gone through the public hearing process and was adopted. And so,
Right. And by the way, if your commercial zone isn't very well done, you may not know it, but it appears that Dollar General does. And the other thing, being a water town, a lot of the land is set at high tide. So some properties wash away, including a town road over the years. Other properties just begin to accrete and go out another 100 feet from their, what should have been their meets and bounds, but on the water side it says the high tide line. And that's well and good unless they want to put in riprap or a seawall. And then, what do you say? That's where the high tide is, not a meet and bound from a pin.
So in that instance, what we asked the town to do is that if they really wanted that parcel to be commercial, to just hold a public hearing and adopt it as commercial. And then we'd put it on their map that we were doing for them. The other thing too is, Ken was alluding to, they have shoreline, and the properties along the shoreline over the years have just filled in new land. And so, 100 feet or more just added to the shore, and the town just acquired that boundary, but your town boundary just doesn't move because you fill in more land. So there were those types of issues that we weren't going to zone property that hadn't gone through a process.
So do they have to have another meeting to adopt a new?
When I say that there's nothing you can do without public hearings.
Right.
And then, because we don't vote on it. And that's the one problem, or not a problem, but it's the way planning and zoning works. The elected officials vote. And they do hear the citizens' complaints, especially in a small town where everybody has a voice. But public meetings are relatively easy to hold. And once the elected officials make a motion, a second, and a positive vote, and that's what I was talking about how you can change the code and you can change the comprehensive plan. You just have to do it ahead of all the challenges coming towards you.
So, here. All right. So I guess we kind of.
So yeah, the purpose of this, what we're getting around to is, we developed it as a tool. It's a checkup. You can do it like a regular doctor's checkup. You don't have to go to the doctor, but it's probably a good idea. And like my doctor says, they all come to us eventually. So we figure you should get ahead of it and try to keep up with your code. And there's always ever-changing zoning ordinance issues. I know, like you said, chickens were a hot topic. Airbnbs have been another one recently. So this is kind of a tool that we use with the boards. Since they're volunteer organizations, a lot of time there's new members, people come on and off, they have staggered membership. So this is kind of a way to gather all of your supporting documents, take a look at your zoning code, and kind of make sure that you're following your own rules of procedure and standards to make sure that everything lines up.
And I just want to also add is that all of this, before you approve it and adopt it, you're going to want to talk to your town or county attorney about it as well. So,
Yes.
So moving on to the history, LAT, local assistance training, we provide technical sorts, and a lot of small towns from a lot of faraway places and stuff. Some small towns, population 200, 500 people, not very big, but they have the same issues as a big place. I mean, you saw yesterday the presentation where large solar farms. We got here in Queen Anne's County, Caroline County has big solar farms being planned. But you have, big warehouse developments and, all types of things are coming in. They can come into a small town just as much as a big town. And a lot of places don't have planning staff. They may only have a town clerk, and the town clerk may have only been there 3 months. So this could be, a heavy lift. Some places don't even have a place to even do PowerPoint presentations because they're not set up. I've been to town halls that don't even have a bathroom. So when we did this document, what we tried to do is we have a Word document that's paper copy that you can hand out. But if you also had the ability to do PowerPoint, you could have the members of the audience, see on the screen kind of what you're doing. It just has the questions and it takes out all of the annotated part of our guidebook. But the planning commissioners are going to look at the guidebook that has the question and then gives an explanation of what this question is looking for, and so on and so forth. But right now it's 44 pages, and you don't want to have to print that out to everybody. But you can use the companion PowerPoint that we have. So the goal of the Maryland Checkup, it's basically consistency with your comp plan, and part of that means is that your zoning reflects your comp plan. And a lot of times we get a comp plan that's adopted, there'll be a lot of recommendations to change buffer standards or density standards, or add certain uses or do different things. And so then you'll go into your, maybe you don't make those changes. But if you do, you'll go into that, maybe you annex some land that's in your growth area, which then necessitates a change to your land use, your zoning map, because then you've created a new zone. And you need to annotate that. We'll go over that in a little bit. And if you've made any changes to the zoning, whether it's your use table or your lot dimensions or, you know, whatever your requirements are, you will make changes to those sections, and not everybody annotates where they've made those changes, that there's been a change. And if they have made a change, they don't always update their zoning code that's online to include those. So your online version may be what you adopted in 2014, but now you've had 3 text amendments and your zoning code online doesn't match that. And also, your planning commissioners, maybe they weren't there the night that new section was handed out, and so their copy of the code isn't the same as yours because they don't have the new definition. So when they're reviewing an amendment and they're looking, let's say you change the height and it went from 30 feet to 35 feet, their plan might still say 30 feet, and everyone else is reading 35 feet. So when someone comes in and asks for something, they may be looking at different standards because their codes had changed and they didn't get the update. Or a member of the public may look at the plan and say, I can do this because it's 35 feet, and then they come to the planning commission and say, no, last year we changed it to 30, but it still has the old version. So that's one of the things that we look at is, does this implement your comp plan? Is it consistent with your comp plan? And then are you keeping it up to date?
Yeah, and I think we're going to run through a quick bullet here quickly, but it's like I said, it's a self-evaluation tool, so it's totally voluntary. You don't have to use it, but it's something that you can use to make sure that your codes, maps, and subdivision regulations all line up.
And then the checkup addresses a variety of zoning topics. We have core topics, which we're going to go over today, and then we have a series of zoning topics that we plan to do. One of the things we want to discuss with you today are what's maybe the most important topics or topics that you can think of. So when we move forward with this, we can provide products that you're interested in.
And accounts for periodic plan amendments, updates, local annexations, changes in best practices, and changes in applicable federal or state laws.
It also encourages an annual reevaluation to make sure that your zoning ordinances, codes, and maps are meticulously maintained and updated. So if you've had any changes throughout the year, do all of your documents reflect that change?
And like David said, it can be used as part of a board or commission-run workshop, or by professional consultants, or just periodically by staff to do reviews. There's a Word document and a PowerPoint, and they go hand in hand and work together.
Yeah, and when we have this list of topic areas, it may be like chickens, maybe it's not on our topic list right now, but if it was an interest to your town, you don't have to look at that. You'd only look at the topics that you're concerned with. And then my last question to Ken, this was dealing with the first bullet here where we have self-evaluation of ordinances, adopted ordinances. And did you also have to change your subdivision regulations?
Yeah. 2 things that came up. There's Board of Appeals, and this Board of Appeals render their decisions and tell you. And then there's the comprehensive plan. So our zoning called for a minimum of 20,000 square feet on the lots. However, the comprehensive plan, when it was written by a more liberal-leaning consultant, had it at 17.5. Well, there was an inherent conflict. The height requirement from planning and zoning, again, we're a water town, and the people who are in the floodplain have to lift their homes to get it out of the floodplain. When they do, there's a good possibility they'll take it above the height restriction. But what's even more common is everybody wants to take their home 10 feet up so that they can park their car underneath and have their utilities underneath. Well, while that made sense when the applicant took Board of Appeals, and Board of Appeals said, yeah, if you're lifting your house for the floodplain, we'll grant you the height. They did not transmit that to planning and zoning. So no changes were made. And because no changes were made, even though we knew that they were going to go and, quote, win at Board of Appeals, it's a lengthy process. It's a couple $1,000s to go to Board of Appeals for something that everybody knew it didn't matter. I mean, it was going to be granted. We just couldn't grant them, and they had to go through this. So catching up with everything that happens, making sure that your zoning ordinance is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and then setting up a mechanism with the Board of Appeals that was this granted in this particular plot of ground, or is this going to be a change for everything that comes, like this height requirement?
Right click on accident. All right, so the structure, basically, like we said, it's a workbook. It has questions and it guides users through a process to basically check up on your ordinance to make sure that all applicable areas are being followed and that all documents are followed along and, you know, working with each other. So it's totally adaptable. Like David said, you don't have to use each section. You can only take, you only have to take the bits that are pertinent to your jurisdiction and use those. You don't have to use it as a tell-all document front to back.
And so the materials that we have, it's a PowerPoint presentation. You'll see examples of this. I'm going to go to our website where we have a link to the PowerPoints. But primarily it's the zoning workbook and guidance document would be the document that the planning commissioners would be using, because it has, it's the instruction book of what you're looking for. But if you're just looking for the cheat sheet, once you know what the questions are, you can just look at it and skip all the explanatory text. So I'm going to try to click on this link and hope it takes us there. And so this is the Maryland Department of Planning website. It's not up there? Didn't go up there?
No, but it's still in presenter mode. No, it's still in presenter mode. That's okay.
So can I get it out of there?
If we can, because we're in presenter mode, it probably won't let us go back. We have to,
Well,
we can just explain the
I'll have to
website.
apologize for that.
Yeah.
Not linking. It works on my laptop, but it's not showing on the screen.
Yeah.
You have to close out the presenter view.
I was going to say, there we go. Now try to pop it open.
You got it?
Now we're back. Okay, we're back to the presentation. Yeah, he just wants to show this web page and then come back to the presentation.
Good? Okay. So how do we get back to it? Just do this one when we're done? Okay. Okay. Is it going up there? So this, the text on the right is just a summary of what we're going to be presenting today. But over on the left side under documents is the zoning checkup guide, and I'm hesitant to click on it.
Do it, David, do
All
it.
right. But as it comes up, you can see.
It's there, you did it.
Yeah, it works.
All right, but it's not the front of it. There we go. So it's a 44-page document, and I'll just try to cursor down a page or two. I don't know if you guys can see it from back there, but it gives you the
4 feet away,
the purpose, the goal, the structure, the things we just talked about. So I'm not going to go over those again. And then the 4 topic areas that we'll talk about. And then, there's an explanatory text. It's basically what we're telling you right now. just written down in Word documents. And then eventually, you'll get to the questions. So this is the topic 1, and there's a list of questions, and there's basically yes or no's. And if yes, do this. If no, do that.
On your website, is there a summary of just the questions only so that we don't?
Well, yeah, let me get to there in a second. But basically, this is, it's just if yes, where is it? And we'll go through these questions on the PowerPoint slide, so you don't have to read 10-point form here. So I'm going to close this out. And did I get back in the wrong one? Actually, I wanted to go back there. So I did it. So what did I do wrong? All right, now I screwed it up. Get back to presenter. No, I wanted to go back to the website.
So you're here, right?
Here.
Well, they can see what you see.
I know, but this isn't the, okay. Is it- All right, there. Okay, so now can you see that?
Yeah.
All right. So over here, I'll just click on chapter 1. And there's the brief explanation. But then they're starting the question. And so these are a little bit condensed so that you can fit the question on a slide. Because if I put 80 words on here, no one can read it. So it's not exactly word for word of what's in the guidance document, but the context of the questions are there. And so this way, if you're presenting to a group and the Planning Commission is working in a work group and they're doing question 1, they could put this on there and everyone would know what question they're on. Anyone from the public, if there is anyone, could see what are they talking about. So it's a way to have something that an audience can see, and then any planning commissioner can look up to say, oh, we're still on question 1, and we haven't moved on to question 2 yet. So it goes on. So here's some other examples, and so it's the questions are there, just the questions. I think what you're asking though, is there a Word document of just the questions? We haven't produced it yet, but it would be easy to do that. At this point, we're just launching this. We're trying to put, how do you explain the question? But we can certainly do just the questions only. Now we need to get back to the website. How come I can't figure this out? Touch it. Let's go back just to the presentation.
No, you said PC screen only, which means it turns off the.
Well, I apologize for that snafu on the site. But on the site, basically, you have the guidebook, and you have each of the 4 topic areas, and we'll go over the topic areas in this presentation. And then, of course, we can go back and prepare just a Word document and have that uploaded shortly. I think that's a good idea. All right. So, how to use. You can review the topic areas that we have at your own pace, but before you do the topic areas, what we would ask is that everyone, at least annually, look at we call these the essential topics, and this is basically making sure that you're your zoning and your zoning maps are up to date and accurate. Because when I'm asked to help, I can't continue anything until I know I have a complete document. And so that means going through the file drawers and looking to make sure that I have copies of all the ordinances, of all the changes, that ordinance is actually signed. Sometimes they get ordinances that aren't signed. I can't do anything with that. Sometimes we don't have ordinances, it didn't get filed. Sometimes we have to go into the archives and look in the archives to see if they have it. Sometimes we have to ask the old planning commissioner that used to be on the board if he still has a copy in his file. You know, so sometimes it's a hunt. So that's when Ken said it might take 18 months, sometimes it's because it's not easy to find the files. You can't find what you're looking for. You know it changed, but it's not there. Sometimes the meeting minutes aren't there. Sometimes the agendas aren't there. And sometimes the public hearing announcements aren't there. So as you're a professional, you really have to make sure that you have all those documents. And the people that are key to making sure that that continues is the Planning Commission. So you may want to look at your zoning code, and it'll say the duties of the Planning Commission. And it'll say recommend changes to the comp plan, recommend changes to the zoning code, review subdivision regulations. But maybe it should also say maintain the zoning code. You know, annually do an annual review to make sure that it's done. It's like your annual checkup to make sure, did all the annexations we do get put on the zoning map? Did the zoning map get signed? Do we actually know where the zoning map is? Because I've had jurisdictions that don't know where their zoning map is. I've had jurisdictions I've gone in where the zoning map that they have in City Hall says draft on it and there are no signatures on it. You know, so those are problems. The developer will come in and use that against you if it's not done right, because in some instances that isn't effective until all those things have happened. Sometimes you need to have the stamp on it as well. So you need to have all these essential things before you can go on and look at all these other topics. And so that's why we did the first 4. And on to the next one. So these are the 4 topic areas. We call it preserving the official zoning map. That's making sure that you've got your official zoning map is actually the official zoning map. Preserving the official zoning code, making sure that your zoning code is the code as it's been amended. And then also going to zoning map changes is that not only do you have the official zoning map, but that you've documented all of the changes and indexed those on that map to show that this is why it's up to date, because we've documented all the changes. The same thing goes with the ordinance, that you might have had 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. Sometimes I've had 19 different ordinance changes that a town's done, and none of them are referenced in the zoning code. So how does someone know where to go to look to find that this section has changed if it's not in there? And how do you know if on the front page of that document it doesn't tell you it's been amended 19 times? So this is one of the things that we think it's critical before you get to any of the other topic areas. And you know, just to kind of illustrate the point, we have other chapters that are getting ready, but we've left it blank at this point because we're not exactly sure. We have some ideas, but we haven't moved forward with identifying those. I'm sorry, I took your...
That's fine. Yeah, but basically, yeah, we're just looking for ideas that are kind of hot topic issues for locals and for planning commissioners, stuff that they're seeing in their day-to-day work that we want to include, because we want it to be beneficial. That's the main thing.
But if you go online and you look at our guidebook, and this is the page on the left is the table of contents from the guidebook, and we have additional topic areas listed. And so the table on the right kind of shows what these are. We're going to go over the first 4, but you know, potential topic areas that we have are block size, missing middle, accessory unit housing, and where there's an accessory dwelling unit task force that's going on right now. So one of the things we thought of before, you know, we would complete that section, we would wait for the task force to complete its recommendations so that we made sure that our recommendations don't conflict with those recommendations. But other things are lot sizes, uses, parking standards, street design, sidewalk standards, road master plans, and duties of the planning board. But other topics that we've been thinking of is, large-scale solar, cannabis is maybe another interest, and then grandfathering. So we'd like to kind of hear from you if there's any topics that you can think of off the top of your head that maybe we should consider. But you can always email it to us if something comes up over time. Chickens? Talk to Ken. Ken's done a really good job with chickens. Chicken coops. Yeah, Galena and Charlestown both were doing chicken coop ordinances. When I was there, I learned a lot about that. But chicken coops, big issue.
Well, in Betterton.
In Betterton, all right. Any others?
Excuse me?
Okay.
Maybe it goes along with street design, but alleys.
Alleys.
In neighborhood
Yeah,
subdivision development.
Yeah, it would, because a lot of comp plans will say, we want connectivity, or we want to, ensure that, roads are connected to other roads, or that we have parking, or that the parking's in the back. But how do you get parking in the back if you don't have an alley? And sometimes your road standards or your development regulations actually don't have a standard for alleys. I mean, you might have built the alleys since 1917, but since
council to override your standard for
yeah.
alleys.
So and then there's a whole lot of issues with alleys, but there are some really good reasons to have alleys. But again, it's maybe in your town you want them, but maybe in your town you don't. So we're not going to say you have to have them, but we're going to say if you're considering alleys, here's the things you should be considering, and make sure your ordinance addresses those, and you can pick what's appropriate for you. Again, most older towns have alleys, but a lot of newer places outlaw them. So, and I mean, I have a preference, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. So, and nor am I going to recommend anything that you guys have to adopt. Ken, right? Did we?
No, we had again the alleys, the mews, whichever you want to call them, because the town had been laid out so many, a couple hundred years before. People quit using them, and people just adopted their land to the town land. So they took up parts of the street and whatnot, to the extent that maybe 30 or 40 years ago, the town went to a thing called black line zoning, which was whatever it is, and we'll make the zoning that. So if you and your neighbor both encroached, or your neighbors encroached on what had been a paper street, it was no longer going to be a street. That land was going to be ceded to all these people, because without doing that, there would probably be no way of straightening out the maps.
And the streets in Kent's town, they're a lot like when you come into the manor here. It's a very narrow road, but they're right-of-ways in some instances from the 1750s. They might have 80 feet, but they only have 18 feet of pavement. And the road isn't in the middle of that 80 feet. Sometimes it's right on one edge versus the other. So the guy...
All town roads that had any water had to be 100 feet wide, so that, because it was early on a shipping, they wanted 3 teams of oxen to be able to pass. I mean, that was why. Of course, now they're very narrow, paved, and barely 2 cars can get by. But be that as it may.
Yeah, but we have, on one side of the street might be closer to the front yard of the one house, but then on the other side of the street, there might be 60 feet of right-of-way, but that owner thinks it's all his. Because it just looks like it's supposed to be my front yard, and it's not. Yeah.
One other possible suggestion is guidance on traffic studies. So we get traffic studies, but sometimes community members say, oh, well, the applicant hired that person, you should have hired them, or they question the veracity of the consultant, but also for the planning commission to interpret and understand the traffic study, maybe there would be something you could include in one of your chapters.
Yeah, I might state that our big problem is everything is citizen initiated, and we very rarely as a town step into things. So things like a traffic study or a survey, the town rarely does that. It's up to whichever feuding neighbor, it's the one who's bringing the complaint has got to bear that economic burden. And you're right.
Yeah, the applicant pays for it, but there's questions over who chose the consultant.
Right.
Yeah, and-
But that's, but what I'm saying is the person who paid is already agreed. And it's rare that we get involved if we don't accept the applicants. Because after that, it's municipal court.
And, traffic studies can be manipulated, depending on what data or factors you use. So depending on what you're trying to do, you can get a traffic study.
That's why I was asking for it to go into the topics
Sure.
to help us
Well,
understand.
Yeah, and that's where,
pros and
sure,
cons.
a town can set a set of parameters that say this is what we're negotiating. I've worked on large-scale developments where you sat down with the engineers and you agreed on what volume, or what version of the traffic data you were going to use and what factors you were going to use and what time of day you're going to do the studies, and whether you do the studies on a weekend or when traffic was going to be low or high. There's ways to try to take all those biases out so you can agree that whatever comes out of that study is we're both going to agree with the results versus I'm giving you a study that shows my project is okay and someone else can do a study and say here's why your project isn't okay. So
Yep.
they're both right. So yes.
Just following up on the traffic studies, we had a couple of instances where, first of all, the traffic studies are being done by the developers. However, the whole criteria for the traffic study is being developed by the staff and not necessarily the planning commission. By the time we get it, it's already done. And we don't have any input on, wait a minute, this is not what we need to see. And the only reason I noticed it was because I'm in construction, so I knew what to look for. And they were using, for example, a bakery for a Dunkin' Donut. And the criteria are going to be different if it's a bakery, if it's a Dunkin' Donut. The traffic is not going to be the same.
Sure. And one of the
how do we? The guidelines would be great
Right.
if we can tell staff, hey, and some of the zoning ordinances do allow us to do that, but it's really hard to push and get the planning commission, all of us as a body, to go back and ask staff to.
We'll take all of your
Verify.
recommendations and I'll go back with, talk to you, you've all met Joe Griffith, he's my boss, and figure out, just what help can we be? Because a lot of our stuff is going to have to, it's generic for statewide. So part of it is, it may not fit your town, that might not be, but so.
But an understanding, for example,
sure.
of the uses
Right.
from the traffic engineers.
Right. And one of the reasons why we have parking standards in here is because a lot of times people will look at, national parking standards, and you'll look at the book and they'll pick like bakery. But the bakeries are from place, it was a bakery study in Kansas City, it was one in LA, and it was one in Rochester, New York. And those aren't just Charlestown. I mean, Charlestown's 500 people. So you wouldn't use those same numbers, but that's what they do, is they look at those national standards and you adopt it. So everyone's adopted these parking standards that are probably for much bigger places. Yes?
I've got two suggestions. One would be something addressing the creation of a tree board or tree ordinance standards. And then, as a part of site plan review. And then the other thing would be your kind of a health check on your trail systems, trails and parks. We're lucky enough in our municipality to have an actual parks board. So some of that we can offload. However, that's a big part of reassessing or doing your comp plan. And then also, you have your town council members who may, as they go in and out, they may not have the same viewpoint about maintaining, this in the future. Maybe not a big deal, but outlining that this is the intent of what planning standpoint that we need to remember.
Well, great. Well, we're going to, I appreciate all this, and what we're going to do and what we encourage you is that, this is why we have these conferences, so we can get together and talk about issues. And as a resource for you guys is to see, what can we do to help facilitate this? If this is something that affects one jurisdiction, does it affect all of them? Can we put together something, some guidance? And then, of course, each one of you are free to pick and choose whether you're going to follow that guidance. But this is why we want to come in and present to you and listen to you. One more, and then we'll go on.
It seems to me when I'm looking at that list, it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg. One affects the other.
Yes.
I think a planning commission would have a hard time sort of figuring out where to start or what to tackle first. Maybe some flow diagrams, diagrams that would show how those different, like street design and parking standards and sidewalk standards all kind of
are the same. But yeah, and Joe and I, when we put this list together, we tried to think about what do we need first. One is we need the first four first, because we need to make sure that then the other topic areas, and that's why that other slide was blank, is because we're not exactly sure of the order. We think, in our minds that this could be a logical order because, before you put in streets and all this other stuff.
But maybe some yes/no
Yeah, right.
flow diagrams might help people, that are trying to do this.
Right.
Track,
Right. Well,
what sections they might want to.
absolutely. And that's where, we're saying, like, at this point, maybe we'll switch it around, but this is our flow order of preference. But we may change it, but you could maybe choose to go out of order because you've got some other issue that's much more important to you at the time. But again, they're all interconnected. You can't do them all at once. So part of it is just picking one and doing it. But I hear what you're saying. Last one, yeah.
The one big thing that I see missing is environment, and how do we address floodplain, hills, forestry, anything like that. So to me, before I even go on to block size, I think the environment is how we address.
Yeah, the list is endless, really. I mean, when it comes to it, but like I said, that's why I wanted to know is cannabis seemed to be a big. We get a lot of calls about cannabis now, and then a lot of calls about solar and different. So what's kind of like the big thing out there? Because we don't do zoning. I mean, no one calls us to do zoning. We don't review zoning. So when a town adopts a zoning code or amends a zoning code, we don't know about it unless we see it in the paper. The state doesn't monitor your zoning. So we don't know necessarily, except if we read it in the papers or we talk to each other and we hear about some issue, what you're dealing with at a planning commission meeting every month. So we'll move on here and get going. So we kind of saw an example of the zoning checkup slide on the website. So on the left is copy of the. I think we actually showed this slide on the website, and so you can start to see where there's a bunch of questions, and then we have the PowerPoint slides that kind of summarize what's going on, and then the things in the red that are highlighted in yellow would be some annotated things that we put in the description that says, be sure to look at this or consider that. And that doesn't need to be on the slide. You can't read it anyway. So that's kind of where these are the same, but they're different. You could probably get away without using the guide. You just use the slides. But again, you probably want to use the worksheet. Maybe just the questions. I hear you. It would make it shorter, but I think we can do all of them. And then again, you can use the PowerPoint if we're in like a meeting like this and you wanted to just show that. If not, you don't even have to use the PowerPoints. They're there if you wanted to use those. And then one of the first things that we talk about, before you start this is forming a work group. Is that instead of just having, all the planning commissioners, maybe you want to get a smaller group of commissioners. Also might include, depending on the size of your town, it could be the town administrator, it could be your planner, could be public works director, somebody that's interested in working in this. But we think it's someone that can help you retrieve documents and look for documents. Like I said, sometimes we have to go into the file drawers to find documents, and so talking to the town clerk usually knows exactly where things are. The town administrator usually, maybe that's the only person you have as a clerk or an administrator. But you need someone that can help you find information on that work group. And so Ken, you guys had a work group? And
We had a work group. I think I alluded to earlier that not everybody lasted the 18 months. The other innovation we put into our work group is that as we began to watch some of the conversations drift, we invited guests into our work group for one session, whether that be the town attorney, the town engineer, or one of the commissioners. We invited all the commissioners all the time, but they never came unless we made a particular outreach to them. And just to get their input while we're working, so you don't get too far away from the solution set.
But I will say when I did this in Rising Sun, the commissioners, they all worked together. It was just on their agenda. After they did their agenda, then we had a workshop, and we went for 2+ hours sometimes just on this. They didn't always have a lot of things on their agenda, but sometimes they'd have to wait an hour or so before we could get to the workshop, so it was a really late night. But we did spend some time going through these things, and so you need a block of time, and so that sometimes it might be good to have it not late on a Tuesday night, that you can do this during the day. Sometimes we met during the day, and I think in Galena we even met on a Saturday, like for 4 hours, so we could get through it all.
Yeah, and so it's kind of like an exercise, like David said, you got to track stuff down. So before it starts, we kind of ask you that you gather the essential documents, whether it be your zoning map, your ordinances, codes, your comprehensive plan, your water and sewer plan, if you have a subdivision ordinance, any of the documents that overlap or go together. We kind of ask that you track those down before, so that once you're ready to get into this, you can just kind of breeze through it. And then once you have all of them, or if you can't find them, that's when, of course, you could reach out to our staff, LAT, and we could help you maybe track down something you don't have.
And again, when you look for these documents, you need the official documents. They can't be a copy of an ordinance that's not signed, or a map that just says draft on it still. It needs to be all of the official copies. And Ken, did you have any zoning amendments that?
More than one that either hadn't been, whether it was approved or not, we couldn't find that it had been. Sometimes it was in the minutes, but they never signed the documents. That was the big thing. Most of the ordinances were passed in the meeting, but then a signed copy of that ordinance was never issued. That was the big problem.
And one of the zoning requests that I was talking about before, the commercial, I believe it was the fire department wanted the parcel next door to be commercial for, I can't remember the reason, and asked the town commissioner, and the town commission said, sure, you got it, town attorney, make it happen. And so they changed the map to commercial, but it never went through any process other than that. And that's all the record showed, was that a request was made, and I couldn't in good faith make that.
Just as a point of humor, that particular strip is now a road, but no one has repaired that road because everybody alleges it's not their road. So.
All right. So then I just have a show of hands. Have any of you experienced updating your zoning code? All right. right, fun. You looking forward to doing it again?
Yeah.
All right. So, it doesn't always happen very often. Sometimes you have a zoning code and it just stays the same, and you might adopt a change for it and stuff. But when you went through your changes, did you have any legal issues or any challenges, or did you find issues and inconsistencies with your zoning and your comp plan and other sections? You did? Everyone's nodding their heads? Everything was perfect? But and what I'm saying is that there probably are issues. I mean, it's not something to be ashamed of that you have. I mean, it's how it happens. I mean, even when I go on our website, we've got old stuff. I'm like, oh, we need to fix it. It's hard to keep track of everything. So, but at some point, I think what we maybe need to do is just to sit down and say, is everything still together before we keep on changing things? Or it's a lot easier to do if something that you just did in the last couple months or within the year than to think about if it happened 6 years ago. And then also you want to be able to catch issues before they become issues. So you don't have a developer coming in and saying, my zoning hasn't changed because that map isn't effective yet. I still get to use the old rules. No matter whether you like it or not, I'm going to go to court and I'm going to win. So, you want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. You went through the whole process to get it changed. Dot the I, cross the T, get it done. And again, when you're going through this process, if you have any issues, you can always pick up the phone and say, hey, David, we're having some issues. What can you tell us about this? What can we do?
And yeah, so in reference to the zoning map, it's got to meet the specific requirements as outlined by jurisdiction's zoning code. So if it's referenced and says it has to have certain criteria, signature blocks of so many people or different parties, those all have to be signed, and it has to be regularly updated. So any amendments or anything like that, and it has to also be accessible. That's the main thing that we see in a lot of our communities, because everybody wants a copy of it or wants to know about their specific zoning issue, so they always want to be able to find the map quickly.
Ken, how many people come in looking at your map?
I think we already talked about this. Some days it's like free Netflix. Everybody's there.
So it has to be done. And like I said, I've gone to places and they don't have a copy of the zoning map anywhere. There's maybe one online, but there's not a copy of the zoning map. And their zoning code typically will say it needs to be like hung in the clerk's office or something like that. So look at your zoning code and see what it says where that zoning map is, or if it even has a requirement. And if it doesn't have the requirement, one of the things we recommend is amend it to say, where does that map go, so everyone knows where to find it.
You have a question?
Oh, question?
So, this kind of goes into the lady's question from a little while ago. It seems to me that what you need to do is grab your zoning map. Say, okay, here's my zoning map. Is this the latest map? Is it officially signed? All right, where's my zoning code? Here's my zoning code. Do the things on the map match what this signed official zoning code says? Then you take both of those things and you go back to your comprehensive plan. And you say, okay, does our comprehensive plan match this? If not, let's either change the comprehensive plan or decide if we're going to move forward.
Yeah,
So then, then you revise your comprehensive plan if you're going to, and then go back and change the map and the code again.
All right, but you can't change your comp plan if you don't have a zoning code that's up to date and you know what you're changing it to.
Right.
Yes, it's a circle, but you got to stop the.
Right, so I think that it goes back to that lady's question about the flow chart, where you start, because it does get a little bit confusing. But I think that if you're looking for a order of how to do things,
And I would say that, since we review comp plans, that's where I'm getting this list from. I'll see jurisdictions that say, we want to mix the housing, we want connected neighborhoods, we want, all these things that or they say we're going to change our zoning code to do this, and they never do it. So the comp plan usually has a whole bunch of recommendations that never get implemented. And you can go back and look at comp plans from a long time ago, and I bet you there's still things in there from 30 years ago that haven't been implemented yet. Good ideas then, good ideas now, but someone's got to take it from point A the point B and put it in the code. So then, some of these questions are going to seem repetitive, like I said, and so we'll probably run out of time and we won't go through all of them. But the difference is it the zoning map or the zoning code? The questions are the same. You still go through the same process. So some of these questions are, does your work group? We're assuming that you have a work group. Do they have a copy of the zoning ordinance or zoning code? And then you would make sure that everyone has the right copy. I remember going to one jurisdiction and they made a change to the number of members on the planning commission. They had 6 and they wanted 7, so they didn't always have a even tie. So I remember at that meeting they did that. And then a year later I came back and they were talking to me about doing some fixes to their zoning code. And so I asked them, I said, okay, I got a question. How many members on your planning commission? And I asked them each individually. First guy looks at his section, says 6. The next guy says 7. The next guy says 6. The next guy says 7. And the reason is because they might not have been there the next meeting when they got the change, or they got the change and they put it in the back of their binder and that section never got changed. So these things happen. So does everyone have the same code? And if you've been there for a long time, you probably have a different version than someone that just started last month. And they need to have the same copy as you do. And so does the public. So then can you locate where the official zoning map is? That's sounds like an easy question, but sometimes the official zoning map isn't anywhere. You got a draft from your consultant and you adopted your comp plan, but then you never went back and adopted a 3x2 map and signed it and put it on a wall or someplace. So you might have a comp plan that says draft or it's not signed, but then you don't actually have an official map. You never went through and finished that. Maybe your contract with the consultant didn't say to do that, or no one just followed up with, hey, you were supposed to send me this, we didn't get it. So just one of those things. So then if you can't find those things, then we're saying, ask the town clerk, ask maybe us if we have copies. We're not required to get copies of your zoning or your zoning map, but sometimes you do send them to us. We encourage you to, and maybe we have a copy of it. But you can always ask, and we can always say, well, let's check with the county. Maybe the county has a copy. You gave a county, did you look here? Did you look in your archives? Did you look, talk to another planning commissioner that was on the board before, or something like that. Look in the newspaper to see what it said. There's ways to kind of piece it back together. So is the zoning map displayed in an accessible and public place? If yes, where is that? And then concurrently you would say, does your zoning code actually say that's where it needs to be? If it says it's in the clerk's office and it's out in the lobby, maybe it's you need to relocate that or change it to say it's in the lobby. What if you move buildings again? So and then if it's not currently available for display, where could you put that? And then again, do a zoning amendment that would say this is where it's going to be. And then make sure that you share that with your other board members, with your town council, and then members of the public, that your website or wherever has copies of that same map. And then is your zoning code and the official zoning map available online? And most planning departments that have a website will have their comp plan and their zoning map, their zoning ordinance online, but is it up to date? Or was it the version that was put up there in 8 years ago and it hasn't been changed and doesn't include the 6 amendments that you've had since then? And if you don't have a website, can you maybe partner with the county to host that on their website or something like that? So I know not every jurisdiction has a website on there, so we can't ask you to put it on the website, but people are looking for things on the web anymore. and then, make sure everyone knows where it is.
All right, and then reviewing the ordinance code. So does the zoning ordinance or code have an official zoning map section? If yes, note the section number. So basically go through and check that your section number and everything aligns. If not, consider adopting or establishing a section dedicated to the official zoning map. It's basically an organizational thing for that.
All right, so I'm going to run through a couple of these. We got 5 more minutes, they're telling me, and then I want to leave a couple minutes for questions. But essentially, if you look at your zoning code, there might be a section in there that says the official zoning map has on date the official action of the town commission made the following changes, and gives a brief description, and it shall be signed by the town commissioners, attested by the town clerk, and no amendment in this chapter which involves the matter shall be effective until the change has been made on the map. So that gives you, does your zoning code have something like this? And if it does, do you comply with what that section says? And so, oops, I went backwards. So, does your map comply with all those requirements? And this is the map that's hanging in the town hall in Charlestown. But does it require it to be displayed in a particular location and those types of things? Then,
Yeah, does it have signature blocks? Are the signature blocks signed by all the parties that have to sign it?
and this one also has a town seal on the bottom right corner.
Same thing with effective dates.
An effective date, this one, it says May 2nd on there. So is it on there? Forever. But in the interest of time,
All right. For a couple minutes.
yeah. So we, check your resolutions and the history, and if you've had those on the map, you would want to also list. Let's see if I can cursor through here really quick. Like on the bottom of this zoning map, where their signature block is, this one's not signed, but they have a list of all the changes, on this date, a resolution number, and it created this district, or it changed this parcel from X to Y, and on this day it did this, and then it has a resolution number, and that needs to be on the map that shows the history of the change. So that's when we say, is it indexed? And the same thing with your zoning code. When you have a change, does the top of that zoning code have a list of all the changes, what resolution, what section changed, and then when you get to that section of the code, let's say it was section 3 part 1, when you go to section 3 part 1, does it say this section was amended on this date, May 13th, 2013? Because when we talk about grandfathering, you need to know when that became effective, because other people may have had a different provision that was applied to their property. And so when you talk about grandfathering, you need to have these dates to know when it changed, or if there's been a second change to that section, which one supersedes the other one. So it's one thing to check out. And then the last thing I wanted to point out that I can't remember, but let's open it up to questions since we'll have a minute or two. So, any questions of?
We've had some good discussion throughout. Yeah, thanks for all the good discussion throughout. That definitely helps us, so that's what we're here for.
Do you also provide, say, not a formal training, but as we do have churn that comes through, we've got new planning commission members, oftentimes that's really hard for.
Yeah, the state has the training module.
Right.
And everybody takes that, and then there's classes and stuff. I think David's been a part of Or does Chuck do those a lot? I think there's different training stuff that our department does offer for board and commission
So
members.
that would be, if it came down to,
Yeah.
you've got 3 new members, because the training is beneficial,
Right.
but if it gets, when you start getting into the minutia, like,
Right.
what exactly are we making rules about here?
Right.
You know,
Yep.
a live back and forth. is
Yeah, we can
helpful.
offer specialized stuff, or if it's like one subject area that you want us to go over, we've done that.
So I guess the last slide I'll show you is that when we talk about ordinance integration, and same with the map, at the beginning of your zoning ordinance, what I expect to see is the history. So this would be on your cover page, and it would show all the changes that had happened over time since the last update of your zoning code. Once you re-update it, then you start over again. But if you've done it, then you would show all the changes from the effective date of that ordinance. And so, and that's where you would go and look in your zoning code to see that there's a citation in that section that changed. And this one's saying that it was amended in 87, and then it was amended in 91. And so it could be that in 87, it amended sentence 1, in 91, it amended sentence 2, or it could mean that in 91, it replaced what was done in 87. So, but now you know that you're looking at, the right version, and there's a change, but you have to go in and you have to do it. So that's one of the things that we asked you to do, is look at your zoning code to see, did you document the changes, and did you actually make the changes and note them in that section? And it often isn't done. And but that's one of the things that we would do when we do our zoning checkup, is to look to make sure that all of those changes are put in your zoning code, and then once we've finalized that, then we can say, this is the one we'll update, because we all have the last version of it. All right, well, I thank you all, and call us if you have any questions.